One of the best adaptations for the Spider-Man mythos is without a doubt the spectacular Spider-Man. It's one of the greatest superhero cartoons ever made, and the textbook example of a fantastic show that was cancelled way before it hit its prime. It still hurts, man. The show gives us some of the best versions of certain Spidey characters and storylines. We got the best MJ, Harry, and Flash outside of the comics, the best versions of Liz Allen and Gwen Stacy, period, Spider versions notwithstanding, of course. And, what I want to talk about today, the best version of Eddie Brock, aka Venom, and the symbiote storyline. The show took inspiration from multiple places. The classic Stan Lee, Steve Ditko era from the early 60s, the Sam Raimi trilogy, and of course the Ultimate Spider-Man comics by Brian Michael Bendis. All of these influences came together to create the perfect high school age Peter Parker. But when crafting Eddie Brock for the show, the writers drew from two specific places: his main continuity version and the Ultimate Comics counterpart. Venom made his first appearance at the end of The Amazing Spider-Man issue 299. After Peter got the alien symbiote on another world, long story, he used it for a pretty damn long time in the real world, close to 10 years. But then, with the help of the Fantastic Four, realized that it was an alien parasite and he rejected it in a church bell tower using its sonic things. I don't know. Eddie Brock was a journalist who published a fake story about the identity of a criminal called the Sin Eater, but when Spidey caught the real Sin Eater, Brock was fired from his job and his wife left him soon after. Thus, Brock blamed everything that happened to him on Spider-Man and grew a deep hatred for him. One day, I went out of church to pray, the symbiote bonds itself to him and together they become Venom. It's clear that the main universe Eddie has no personal connection to Peter Parker, only his hatred of Spider-Man. And to be honest, he hates Spider-Man for some really petty reasons. Spider-Man didn't make him write the fake story in the first place. That's all on you, dude. You screwed yourself. This Eddie just comes across as a hateful douche, an intimidating villain to be sure, but a douche nonetheless, who thankfully over the years became a much more interesting character and an anti-hero in his own solo series, which is just filled with so many wacky moments. Now the Ultimate Eddie, he did have a personal connection with Peter. Their fathers were lab partners, their moms were friends, and they used to play together when they were little. But then their parents all died in the same plane crash. No, not that plane crash, at least not in those specific circumstances. God, that movie's dumb. Now high school Peter reaches out to Eddie, who's in college. He shows Peter what their fathers were working on together, a black liquid bodysuit that can cover a person and cure them of any disease. So basically this universe's version of the symbiote was meant to be a cure for cancer. Peter then accidentally gets some on him and it forms around him as the black suit. After using it for a little bit and realizing it's completely bad, he tells Eddie what's up because this Peter can't keep his secret identity to save his life, literally, and he destroys the vial. But Eddie considers the symbiote his birthright and takes some of a small remaining sample and allows it to cover him, and he becomes Peter. He becomes he doesn't become Peter, he becomes Black Peter. Peter's a brother. He takes some of a small remaining sample of it and becomes Venom. But this Eddie isn't such a great person. He is a skinny, gross bastard who tries to get in bed with Gwen Stacy, but when she rejects him, for obvious reasons, he calls her a tease. Wow!
He's an asshole!
The main problem with these two versions of Eddie Brock is that you basically feel no sympathy for any of them. And that's where the spectacular Spider-Man fixes the root of the problem. The first 3 episodes demonstrate that this Eddie Brock is a pretty good guy. He has the same connection to Peter as in the Ultimate comics, but the two are much closer. He helped defend Peter from Flash in high school before he got his powers, and he swapped from being the star of the football team in high school to his love of science in college, and he's now the lab assistant for Doctors Kurt and Martha Connors. He helps Pete and Gwen acclimate to their internships at the lab, stays with and tries to comfort Max Dillon after the accident that made him Electro, tries to fight off Electro when he attacks the lab later in the episode, and spends most of the third episode following Kurt Connors, who's transformed into the Lizard. He even offers himself up as bait so Spidey can administer the cure. Wow, what a cool dude! But it's also his morals that turn him against Peter in the first place. See, because Peter took a photo of his battle with the Lizard to get his job at the Daily Bugle, making it look like he ditched everyone in a time of crisis for money. Yeah. Eddie's pissed, of course, and Peter's fired from the internship, but he wasn't getting paid, so it ain't that much of a loss if you ask me. The rest of the season shows how their friendship deteriorates more and more. They make up after the Lizard incident, but when Eddie takes Gwen to the fall formal because Peter said he wasn't going, and then Peter shows up with Mary Jane Watson on his arm because Aunt May set him up for a date, yeah, he thinks that's a dick move. The distance between the two gets worse, especially when the alien symbiote gets sent to the Connors lab. At this point, Pete and Eddie's relationship is fine, but Eddie tells him he can come take a look at it. When Peter sneaks in to take photos for his personal collection, Black Cat tries to steal it and it gets stuck to Peter in the fight. With the symbiote gone and without the money from the research, the Connors have to fire Eddie, putting him at risk to get kicked out of college. Then he runs into a symbiote-possessed Peter, and let's just say it doesn't go well.
Yo, bro! You cost me my job! Shut it! We're tired of your whining.
Hey, what's this now?
Shove off, Brock. Permanently.
From that point on, their friendship is effectively over. Eddie later tries to go out with Mary Jane just to potentially hurt Peter, but MJ ain't taking that crap from him. God, this version of MJ is fantastic. Eddie has become the
Asshole
that his comic counterparts began as. And then, the final nail in the coffin. Spidey returns the symbiote to ESU after rejecting it, and freezes it to death. Despite Spider-Man's warnings, it doesn't matter to Eddie. His one shot at his life back, gone. But the symbiote survived and reached out to Eddie. From there, it was all over.
Bond with us, Eddie Brock. Mind, body, and soul.
Yes.
Accept the gift the Parker rejected.
Yes.
And together, we will have our desire.
Yes!
We will have vengeance on Spider-Man!
This video does not do his story justice. Go watch the first season of Spectacular Spider-Man on whatever illegal website that you use. The show is incredible. The way they brilliantly crafted Eddie's downfall from good guy to absolute monster who gives into his worst emotions was fantastic, and without a doubt, the best version of Venom.
I got that venom, not knowing when I'm never gonna slow up and I'm ready to snap.